Good evening, and let me just remove that from my screen. Good evening and welcome again to week 4, session 2 of the master plan for healthy communities. I'm so glad that you've chosen to join us for the next hour and a half as we again explore some important messaging, some words of wisdom, some useful advice, some suggestions for you to ponder and to quiz over with regard to how God intends us to live more healthily. Now, I've just been told from a very reliable source that last week's handouts, we were looking at the global pandemic, some lessons regarding how we can be healthy during the global pandemic. Those handouts are now available. So if you are already on the mailing list for healthy communities, then by all means, you'll receive those. If you haven't received those or you would like to receive those, then please put your contact details in the chat. Yeah, add your name, email address to the chat. I will ensure that those handouts make their way to you. I should also say that the previous week's handouts, recipes are equally available. Again, leave your details in the chat, and we'll get those useful useful source of information across to you. Some of you may not have been able to have joined us in previous weeks, or you may have friends, families, colleagues who weren't able to join us. YouTube, great source. Go back to YouTube, rewind the sessions that we've had over the last 3 weeks. Maybe it's a time zone issue or the individual was too busy and weren't able to hear this live. But please direct them back to our YouTube channel and have a view. Yeah, get them to read through and listen through the important messages that are there. Now, we started a new series last night, hoping that you were able to join us. But tonight we continue Purposed, Health and the Man Daniel. And our presenter has been our very able producer for the last 3 weeks. So Andre Crawford is going to bring session 2 to us. But before he does that, last night, Andre proposed a 7-day challenge for us all of how we can begin to get into this journey of living more healthily. Now, today's challenge was Meatless Monday. Now, if you're able to, those of you who are already online, in the chat, if you managed to achieve today's challenge of Meatless Monday, can you put a yes in the chat for me? I'm waiting for the responses. Did anybody, I've got 2 already. Did anybody manage, 3, did anybody manage to achieve the Meatless Monday challenge? The yeses are coming through. The yeses are coming through.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Don't come off mute right now. We'll have some questions later in the session. But just go into the chat. Type into the chat. Yes, you did. If you put no, we're not gonna. We'll leave that one where it is. But I can see yeses in the chat of a number of people who've managed to do the Meatless Monday. Okay, so here's another piece, just before we go into the session. Here's another piece. What was tomorrow's challenge? What's Tuesday's challenge? Anybody able to add into the chat? What was the challenge for tomorrow? Meatless Monday, Tuesday. Temperance Tuesday. I'm not sure I remember Temperance Tuesday.
Take out the snacks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was about, you're right. I think you're right. It was about removing snacks, wasn't it? Taking yourself away from something that's That's driving your attention. It's kind of removing yourself away from distractions. Is that correct? So it's Temperate Tuesday. So that was correct. What about Wednesday?
It's Temperance Tuesday.
It is Temperance Tuesday all day. Thank you. I've been told off. Yeah, I was wrong. Temperance Tuesday. What about Wednesday then? What was Wednesday? Anybody? What was Wednesday? Walk Wednesday. Was it? Yeah, was it Walking Wednesday or was it Water Walk Wednesday? I'm seeing a bit of an exchange going on in the chat. Was it water or was it walking? Yes, it was. It was Walking Wednesday. So Wednesday, we're going for Walking Wednesday. Oh, don't give my secrets away. Don't give my secrets away. Thank you. What was Thursday? What was Thursday? What was Thursday's challenge? What was Thursday's challenge? Let me see whether Thirsty Thursday?
Water.
Was it Thirsty Thursday? Stay off mute for the moment. I'm only taking discussion in the chat. Was it Thirsty Thursday? Andre, am I right? Are we right?
Yes, you are indeed correct.
Thirsty Thursday. What was
Thirsty Thursday?
Thirsty Thursday. What was Friday? Anyone? What's Fasting Friday is coming. I think you're right on Fasting Friday. And we don't just mean fasting from food. We're talking about things that you feel overly connected to, that you think, I'm going to break away from that. Yeah. Remember, all these issues about health, very much about physical, but certainly about mental as well. What was Saturday? What was the Saturday? Slow down Saturday. You guys are ahead of me. I've not even asked the question and I'm getting the answer in the chat already. Yes, slow down Saturday for those who attend church. Go to church, slow down, forget about what else is going on. For those who may not be regularly going to church, maybe give that a thought, or maybe separate yourself from something and relax. Yeah, spend some time in relaxing and meditating and thinking all things good. Finally, what was Sunday? And Andrea, thank you very much. Selfless Sunday. What was Selfless Sunday all about? It's less about me and all about everyone else. So doing something admirable, doing something out of love, doing something for somebody who's in need and not expecting anything in return. So you all know it. So tomorrow is Wednesday. Set your calendar, get yourself ready for Walking Wednesday. For what was Thursday? Thirsty Thursday. Let's see how many of you can come on in our next couple of sessions to say, yes, you've achieved it. And I'm so looking forward to my meatless meal. I've been away in London all day and my wife has prepared a meatless meal for Monday. Andre, you hear that? A meatless meal for Monday. And I'll tell you all about it tomorrow. So right now, let's have a word of prayer and allow Andre to come and grace us with some more pearls of wisdom. Just bow your heads where you are. Lord God of heaven, we thank you for another day, another opportunity to pause and to ponder and to reflect and to think about how we can be more healthy. Lord, you designed us to be more healthy. That's physically, mentally, spiritually. And so as Andre comes and brings another session to us and some words, some pearls of wisdom to us, may they remonstrate themselves with us. May they captivate us in some way. May they tell us something that maybe we need to consider, something we need to do better. And may at the end of this session, we all can be in a better place than before the session started. Amen. Andre, it's all over to you on Meatless Monday.
Clive, thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the little show before the show. I'm looking forward to hearing what your meatless meal was tonight. I don't want to wait till tomorrow, so please do eat it when you need to eat it, but let us know tonight what it was. To everyone else, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for taking another hour and a half out of your busy schedules to have your lives changed by the healthy communities or the master plan for Healthy Communities team. We do covet your time, and we do covet your interaction. So we want to say thank you again for everything that you have done. Without you, this program just wouldn't be the same. We'd be presenting to ourselves. So thank you very much. Like last night, you can interact in the chat. I can see it. I may not always get to the question or the comment at the same time, but I can see it. And if I ask a question, please don't unmute yourselves, but do put the answer in the chat.
You're muted.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. So last night we started with our session, this week's session called Purpose, Health, and the Man Daniel. And we looked at the case study of Daniel chapter 1, and we looked at how Daniel was faced with a situation, a decision that he needed to make. And our principal thought that came out of last night was that Daniel purposed in his heart that he wouldn't defile himself. He'd made his mind up that whatever came his way, he was going to be true to principle. And we learned and we saw and we said that we were going to do the same thing, that no matter what took place around us and around in our situations, we were going to purpose that we were going to and not going to defile ourselves, and we were going to be true to principle. Now, I did have the slide. I didn't have it last night, but I do have it tonight. The 7-day challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to email this out to you when I email out the handouts for last week, what Jackie did last week, God's plan in a global pandemic. So you can take a quick snapshot of it now. But I will email it out to everyone whose email I do have. If I don't have your email and you know I don't have it, then please do put it in the chat so that when I send out the handouts and the 7-day challenge, you can get your copy. Okay, with that being said, we are going to look at another case study from the book of Daniel, and it's just the very next chapter, Daniel chapter 2. And I remember saying that in Daniel chapter 2, we're going to find out that Daniel is in a situation that causes him stress. So before we get to that case study, let me ask you a question. Are you stressed? That's the question I'm asking. Are you stressed? Let me ask you another question. How would you know? So the first question, are you stressed? Second question, how would you know? So tonight we're going to look at how what stress is, how did Daniel deal with his stress, and the lessons that we can learn to help make our lives a little bit less stress-free. So go over some of the old ground that we did over last night, and we'll move forward. We want to, as a Healthy Communities team, want to show you that you can live healthy without being wealthy. In fact, your health is your wealth. You ask anyone who has a healthy bank account that when they're sick, none of that money is any use to them unless that money can bring their healing. But the money in and of itself doesn't bring healing. It might get them the best doctors, it might get them the best medical care, but if those medics can't help them physically to bring about healing, then that money is useless to them. But what we've learned over the last 3 weeks and 2 days is that our health is our wealth. And if we know how to preserve our health, then we're going to be always wealthy. Now, you may have heard of this next quote by a famous philosopher called Hippocrates. He said, "Let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food." I'll say that again. Let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food. What is he saying? He's saying, well, the things that we eat should also bring about healing in the body. And the things that bring about healing in the body should be the things that we eat. Now, last night, I said to you that we as a Healthy Communities team are dealing with education as opposed to medication. But we also said that medication in and of itself isn't a bad thing. When we are in medical emergencies, when it's needed to save life, then we need to use the medication. But medication shouldn't be a way of life. Medication shouldn't be a way of life. We also said that every product has an owner's manual. Every single product that we buy has an owner's manual, and that owner's manual tells you about the product. It tells you about the manufacturer. It tells you how to keep that product in the best working order. It tells you what you should do if that product begins to break down, and how to restore it to the best working order. And we said last night, and we saw that the Bible is humanity's owner's manual. And we went through a few principles in the Bible about how to keep this body healthy. In fact, not only how to keep the body healthy, but what this body is made up of. Now, I'm going to ask you quickly, what is the smallest organism in the body? We've got a few seconds. Smallest organism in the body. I'm looking in the chat. Smallest organism in the body. Begins with a C. Cell. Excellent, excellent. And when the cell comes together in communities, what does the cell in community make? So cells in community make, begins with T. Tissue. Tissues coming together in community make organs. Organs coming together, certain organs coming together, create bodily systems. And we talked about the endocrine system, the respiratory system, the skeletal system. We talked about many different systems. And systems coming together make or create what we have is our whole body. So cells make tissues, or cells in community make tissue, tissue in community, organs in communities, systems, and systems, the whole body. We learned the principle that he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. We saw that there are 5 needs of the cell. And in order, they were oxygen, water, nutrients, waste elimination, freedom from poisons. If we can keep the cells healthy in that order, oxygen, water, nutrients, waste elimination, freedom from poisons. If we can keep the single cell healthy, then we can keep the tissue healthy. If we can keep the tissue healthy, we can make the organs and the systems and the whole body healthy. And we drew the parallel saying that the cell is like the individual person in a community. It's like me and it's like you. If the individual person in the community is healthy, not only physically, but mentally, spiritually, has a good disposition, has a good outlook, that if one person in a community is healthy, then maybe a household can be healthy if everyone's doing the same thing. And if the household can be healthy, what about the street? What about the neighborhood? What about the town or the city? So we're trying to create healthy communities, one life at a time. And we're dealing with lifestyle-related diseases, one cell at a time. So let's keep going. Principle number 6, I think it was. I gave you 5 principles yesterday. So principle number 6, Job chapter 29 and verse 16. It's the second half of the verse that we want. And this is what it says. The cause which I knew not, I searched it out. The cause which I knew not, I searched it out. Everything that takes place in our world has an initial cause. Things don't just happen by themselves. Disease doesn't happen without a cause. Now, there's another quote that we mentioned yesterday, and you've been hearing it for the last 3 weeks and 2 days. And this is the second part of that quote. It's in the same paragraph. So the first part of the quote goes like this: disease is an effort of nature to free the system of conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. So we understand by now, I hope we understand by now, that disease has a cause. And the cause of disease is a violation of one of the laws of health. Maybe it is the law of godly trust. Maybe it's the law of water. Maybe it's the law of open air. Maybe it's the law of daily exercise. Maybe it's the law of temperance or nutrition. What law is it that has been broken, that has caused the system to begin to fight against what's taking place and bring about disease? So here is a nugget for you. If you get sick, the first thing that you should do is not reach for the paracetamol or the is it Panadin, or I can't even remember the names of these allopathic medicines. But the first thing that you should do is think back, okay, what have I done recently that may have violated one of the laws of health? So if you get a headache, don't reach for the paracetamol. Say, okay, how much water have I drunk today? Maybe you're feeling a little bit bloated and you're like, man, maybe I should go for the Gaviscon or the Andrews. Well, think back. Did I mix fruit and vegetables in the same meal? Why? Because fruit digests a lot quicker than vegetables do. And when that happens, it creates bloating in the system. So that's what we need to do. In case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. That's the first step of 4 steps. And over the week, I will give you the rest of the 4 steps so that you can begin to be your own doctor. You can begin to take care of your own self by knowing what law you have violated. So let's move on. What actually is stress? How is stress defined? Now, here's a definition that I quite like. Stress is a specific response by the body to a stimulus that disturbs or interferes with the normal physiological equilibrium. So stress is anything that unbalances the system. Now, not all, you will have heard Jackie say this last week, not all stress is bad. Because when you go to the gym and your body is under stress, muscles grow. When your body is under stress, when your muscles are under stress, they grow. When the mind is under stress, when it's learning a language like music, when it's learning a foreign language, when it's trying to solve a puzzle, when it's under that kind of stress, the mental capacity grows. So not all stress is bad stress. Some stress is actually necessary for growth. So here is our principle from yesterday. He that is faithful, that which is least, is faithful also in much. So we're using that principle to talk about or to understand disease at a cellular level. Okay? If we're faithful with the cell in keeping it healthy, then in return, we're going to have healthy tissue, healthy organs, healthy system, healthy body. So yesterday, we began looking at the man or the young man called Daniel. When we came upon him yesterday, he was a young man, had been taken to Babylon, his name was changed from Daniel, which means God is my judge, to Belteshazzar. He didn't kick up a fuss when his name was changed, but he remonstrated when they tried to change his diet, because Daniel knew that what he put into his body was going to directly affect his mind and his physical body. Clive was or is, I think maybe, deals with computers, and he has this phrase that garbage in, garbage out. Garbage in, garbage out. You are what you eat. You are what you drink. You are what you think about. So Daniel realized, if I put in my body what the king is asking me to put in my body, then there's going to be a problem. And if you remember back from yesterday, the king had brought them in to train them, and they were going to be in this training for 3 years. So it wasn't going to be a meal once a week. It wasn't going to be a special meal at a weekend. It was going to be a daily meal that Daniel was going to partake if he chose to eat what the king had offered. The king's meat, his dainties, his high sugar, high fat, high cholesterol, his alcoholic beverages. And Daniel said, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. What you should give me is pulse and water. And in that word pulse, we saw it was beans, it was lentils, it was legumes, it was maybe adzuki beans or cowpeas, it was black eye beans, it was red split peas, it was yellow split peas, it was chana dal, possibly, and it was water. And we saw that after 10 days, Daniel's mental capacity wasn't the only thing that shone. His actual physical appearance. So much so that Melzar, who was the king's government official, looked at Daniel and said, yeah, this guy looks good. And not only Daniel, but Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And then when they stood before the king said, woo, these guys are different. Well, it doesn't say that, but you can tell that he thinks that they're different because he promotes them. And he says, you look different to the other people of your sort that have been eating my diet. So that was case study number 1. Case study number 2, we find in chapter 2 of Daniel. So chapter 1, Daniel has purpose and has firm determination. In Daniel chapter 2, let me give you the narrative. So it's a few years on, and there comes a point where the king, Nebuchadnezzar, has dreamed a dream. And the Bible says, the narrative says, what am I looking for? The case study says, and in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams wherewith his spirit was troubled and his sleep brake from him. Have you ever had a dream that has caused you to wake up out of sleep and you think, you know what, that was significant. That was significant. But notice in the next verse that we don't have it in the next verse, but what takes place in the narrative is that the king, when he wakes up, he realizes that the dream was significant, but he doesn't remember it. He knows that it's important, but he doesn't remember anything about the dream. So what happens is Nebuchadnezzar, who is the pagan king, he has advisors in his government. And in his government, he says to the advisors, this is what's happened, guys. I've had a dream and I can't remember the dream. What I need you to do is I need you to tell me the dream and I need you to tell me the interpretation. And the dialogue goes that the advisors, the magicians and the soothsayers and the people that were on the payroll, they said, King, if you tell us the dream, we will give you the interpretation. And the king said, I'm struggling, guys. I'm struggling because I can't even remember the dream. I know it was significant. I know it means something, but I can't give you any more information. And then it says in Daniel 2:5, the king answered and said to the Chaldean, the thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. So the king wasn't messing about. The king said, guys, you're on my payroll. I'm paying you handsomely to tell me what I need to hear. I'm paying you handsomely. You have nice cars in the drive. You have big houses. You don't have to worry for anything. When I send you an official business, it's all expenses paid. And all I'm asking you to do is tell me about the dream and the interpretation. But here's the thing. If you don't do that, then not only am I going to take away your allowance, not only am I going to take away your cars and your houses, but you're going to be cut in pieces and your houses are going to be a dunghill. And they find themselves in a situation that said, listen, king, what you're asking is actually impossible. I don't know if you know that, king, but what you're asking is actually impossible. There is not a man on the earth that can do what you're asking. Therefore, no one's ever asked this request. And the king gets mad. Nebuchadnezzar gets angry and says, you know what? In fact, here's what it says. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore, there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such a thing of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requires, and there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. So they're saying, listen, king, the only people or the only beings that can tell you the answer to your question is the gods, and they don't talk to us. So Nebuchadnezzar gets angry, real angry, because he realizes these guys are charlatans. These guys are just taking my money, and probably what I've asked them before, they've just told me what I wanted to hear. But now they've come unstuck. So it goes, for this cause, the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And a decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. Now, here's the thing. Daniel, at this point, isn't in this initial dialogue. If you read the narrative, and if you read the case study, you realize that Daniel isn't in this original dialogue that Nebuchadnezzar has just had with his astrologers and magicians. So they seek Daniel and his fellows to be slain. Arioch, who is another government official, goes to Daniel's house and says, look, Daniel, this is the situation. And Daniel's like, man, why is the king's decree so hasty? And Arioch tells Daniel what the situation is. Now, Daniel's situation, would you agree with me that Daniel's situation was an acutely stressful situation? Daniel finds himself in a situation where his life is literally on the line. The situation that he finds himself is acutely stressful. Now, let me explain to you what acute stress is, and I'll explain it to you in the form of a story. So when I first moved to Manchester, I used to live in Salford, which is not too far from where I live now. And one morning I was going to work. I was a student, but I was working in the holiday. I was going to work, and as I was walking through the estate, they were building some new houses. And as they do, when the building site is closed, they put up big fences, like 6.5 foot, 7 foot fences. So I'm walking as I normally do, down through the estate, minding my own business, thinking about the day ahead. And as I was walking through the estate, I saw a fox walking towards me. And the fox stopped, and I stopped. Now, when I was younger, I was told that foxes attack people and eat people when I was much younger, when I was a child. So the first thing that came into my mind when I saw the fox was that this fox is going to attack me. And so I said, Andre, stop being silly. You're a big man. It's a fox. Just keep walking and it will run away. So as I was walking towards the fox, it started to walk towards me. As I started walking quickly towards the fox, it started walking quickly towards me. Immediately, something else happened in my body. I started to feel tingles. I started to feel that my muscles tensed up. And I looked around and I realized, hold on a second, if I don't make or take evasive action, something bad is going to happen. And the only escape route was over the 6.5, 7 foot fence. And I must have been Superman that day, because I don't even remember touching the fence. 6.5 foot, 7 foot, because what had happened was that I was in an acutely stressful situation, and something was taking place, or many things were taking place in my body. Now, a response to acute stress is when a response to imminent danger turbocharges the system with powerful hormones that can actually damage the cardiovascular system if it's prolonged. So what was happening in my body was the fight or flight response. And as you'll see, cortisol was coursing through my veins, adrenaline was coursing through my veins, and there are certain processes that just slowed down and stopped. But there were other processes that were firing. Because I thought, if I don't do something, I'm going to be this fox's dinner or breakfast. So there was cortisol coursing through the veins, there was adrenaline coursing through the veins, and I started to feel tense. And the power that I had, I didn't have just previously because I wasn't in an acutely stressful situation. So what was going on inside? What are the effects of stress, acute stress on the body? So here we go. Acute stress, hidden effects. What was taking place in my body when I saw this fox? Cortisol, which is a steroid hormone, it's nature's built-in alarm system. It's the body's main stress hormone. Cortisol was being released into my body, and it was increasing my blood pressure and my blood sugar while depressing the immune system. Now, that's not a problem if the acute stress is only for a moment. That's not a problem. And the reason why it was increasing blood sugar and increasing blood pressure, you'll see on the other side of the screen, and I'll explain it shortly. So cortisol is being released, increasing blood pressure and blood sugar and depressing the immune system. Adrenaline is also being released for increased strength for fight or flight. Have you ever been in a situation where you've had that response? You're either going to fight your way out of this situation or you're going to run away as fast as you can. That's because cortisol and adrenaline have started to course through the system. And as soon as the situation dissipates, as soon as the immediate threat is gone, then the levels return back to normal. That's a legitimate use of cortisol and adrenaline. That's a good use of cortisol and adrenaline. On the other side of the screen, the brain gets the body ready for action, which in turn prevents sleep. So when you're in an acutely stressful situation, sleep is not an important process. When you're in an acutely stressful situation, sleep is the last thing the body wants to do. The liver releases glucose for muscle fuel. So remember, glucose is the fuel for the cells. It's the fuel for the cells so that when you're in an acutely stressful situation, the body charges the muscles with fuel because you need to get away. You need to jump that 6.5 foot, 7 foot fence, or you need to run as fast as you can, or you need to do something to get out of immediate danger. So the body is pumped full of glucose because the body's going to need it. The muscles are going to need it. Your breathing gets quicker. The blood flow gets quicker. Digestion slows down or stops. Why? Because it's an unnecessary process. At the moment that the body is going through this response, it's an unnecessary process. So stress stops or slows down digestion. Urine production slows down or stops. In an acutely stressful situation, a little bit of urine might come out to begin with, but after that, it's off. Oxygen, nutrients, and blood flow are shunted to the muscles. So the reason why your blood pressure goes up when you're acutely stressed is because the blood vessels constrict. The speed of the blood increases. The sugar level goes up because your liver is releasing glucose so that the muscles can be fueled. But if acute stress is prolonged outside of the immediate situation, it then moves from acute stress, small stress. Think of maths, an acute angle is a small angle. It moves from acute stress to chronic stress. And chronic stress is an issue. Because the same thing happens in the body under chronic stress. Cortisol is released, adrenaline is released. The body is always in a state of fight or flight. Glucose is constantly being produced in the system. Digestion stops, so you don't even feel like eating. And you're not taking in the nutrients because the body's in this state that it doesn't reckon, it feels that it needs to do something. Sleep is gone. So somebody who's stressed doesn't sleep very well. Oxygen, nutrients, and blood flow are always shunted. So the nutrients that would normally be taken from a blood traveling around the body at a nice pace those nutrients can't be extracted because the blood is moving now too quickly. So Daniel then goes in before the king and asks that he would give him time. Now this is a really interesting principle, because the last thing that you think about when you're acutely stressed is having more time. In fact, what you would wish is that time moved more quickly and you'd be out of the situation. But Daniel, when he was in that acutely stressful situation that his life is on the line, the king doesn't like any of the wise men or the astrologers or any of those people that are his peers. He actually says, you know what? Give me some time. Give me a little bit of time and I'll come back to you and I'll give you the answer that you're looking for. Now, that's a principle that we need to make sure that we take on board. That when we're stressed, when we find ourselves in a stressful situation, sometimes the first thing that we need to do is try and buy ourselves some time, depending on what the situation is. Now, why was Daniel able to think so rationally when he was under acute stress? It goes back to what we read yesterday and what we learned yesterday. Daniel was on a plant-based diet. And because he was on a plant-based diet, his brain was constantly nourished with good nutrition. His blood was constantly being mobile, and the nutrients that he needed from his food were being carried by the blood to everywhere that needed to be nourished, especially his brain. So now that he finds himself in another situation or a different situation that is stressful, he's able to think clearly. He's able to process clearly. He's able to think, you know what? Although this is stressful, there are few options open to me. Again, that's a lesson for us. If we are fueling the body when we're not stressed correctly, then when we are stressed, when we do find ourselves in acute stressful situations, we may not have brought it on ourselves. We might just find ourselves in it like Daniel did. We're going to be able to process a lot more quickly, a lot more easily, and we're going to be able to make the right decisions under those pressures. So for those that didn't see yesterday, what are the pulses? Peas, lentils, beans, and as I said, black-eyed peas, red cherry peas, kidney beans, white beans, fava beans, beluga, all of those good power-packed nutrient beans and pulses Daniel was feeding on for 10 days. And yesterday we said that it was 10 days that he was eating this before that, but the test was for 10 days. And in 10 days, he was looked on and said, you know what? Yeah. Your diet is superior. What else was he doing? He was drinking water. Pure water. No lemon juice in there. No pineapple juice in there. Nothing. Because as we said, when you add something to water, it ceases to be water. It becomes food, because the body has to separate whatever you've added to it before it can use the water. So he was drinking pure water. His mind was sharp. In fact, if you remember the narrative from yesterday, not only was he wiser and looked better than those that were taken into captivity with him, but he was wiser than the wise men that were already in Babylon. And then we made this declaration that the best diet for a clear mind is a plant-based diet. You get your protein, your calcium, your phosphorus, your iron, your magnesium. You get all of those different elements that the body needs right from plants. And like I said, in the second week, Kathleen showed us how to prepare these plants healthily. So again, the best diet for a clear mind is a plant-based diet. In fact, we saw that people who are at the top of their professions, sports people, politicians, they're now beginning to advocate the blessings and the benefit of a plant-based diet. We looked at Serena Williams, we looked at Sergio Aguero, footballer, we looked at Lewis Hamilton, professional Formula One driver, Cory Booker, and Bill Clinton. Politicians who have said, you know what? This diet is indeed superior. So they've made the switch, and they're saying our lives are so much better for it. If you go onto Google and YouTube, you can see bodybuilders who are, as the young people, they're ripped, powered by plants. Because God knows, as the manufacturer of this body, of this living machinery, what is the best fuel for it. So let's keep going. Stress shuts down your digestive system. That's why somebody who's stressed may feel knots in their stomach. Stress shuts down your digestive system. And if the digestive system is shut down, the body cannot be nourished. The nutrients that would normally come out from the intestines, the water that would normally stripped away, it's not happening. So notice what's happening when you're under stress. There are two things that the body, that the cell needs that they're not getting. And it's number 3, nutrition, and number 4, waste elimination. When you're under stress and your digestive system shuts down, your body can't be nourished, neither can you get rid of waste. That's why stress is at the root, or can be at the root, of many, many diseases. Your digestive system shuts down, your body, and when your digestive system shuts down, your body cannot be nourished, neither can it get rid of its waste. And if you can't get rid of your waste, you're just poisoning yourself from the inside out. And remember, if the blood is poisoned, everywhere that the blood goes is also going to be poisoned. A person who is stressed and cannot get rid of waste will not be able to think straight. Will be making all kinds of decisions that they wouldn't necessarily make if their system was clear and their minds were thinking correctly. Going to bed very late is a cause of stress. And the reason why it's a cause of stress is because there are certain processes that take place when you go to sleep. There are certain processes that only happen when the body is at rest. Not only does the brain sift through and sort through the information that you've received that day, but it also begins the process of healing. It also gets ready for the next day. Melatonin is that hormone that regulates the night and day sleep cycle. And it's released at nighttime along with leptin and ghrelin, which regulate appetite. So leptin doesn't alter food intake, but it controls the energy expenditure. So it regulates that if you've had, let's just say you've had a complex carbohydrate for breakfast, like oats, it regulates the release of the energy throughout the day, and it regulates the expenditure of that energy over a long period, so that you stay fuller for longer and you are less likely to snack. But those things are set up from the night before. Those things are set up ready for the next day. So when you go to sleep late and you miss that window, or you go to sleep late and you only have a small window of rest, there are certain processes that the body just cannot complete. It's even worse if you've eaten a large meal before you've gone to sleep, because what the body has to do then is it has to use all of the energy that it would use to release leptin and ghrelin and melatonin and processing the information. It has to use all that energy to digest the food. But because it's in a state of rest, not all the food is going to be digested. So sometimes you wake up and you still feel full. But if the food has sat there, not digested, and you can't get rid of your waste, then you know what's happening. The cells are becoming more and more unhealthy. These hormones are dependent on sleep timing, duration, and quality. So sleep timing is what time have you gone to bed? Duration, how long have you slept? Quality of the sleep, how long were you in REM sleep? How long were you in the deep sleep? So you begin to see that we can make decisions that are harmful to the body that will actually bring on stress. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone. It's what is released when you start to feel hungry. And now the other thing is, the later you stay up is the more time you have to think about the problem. The later you stay up is the more time you have to think about the problem. So it becomes a vicious cycle. You go to bed late because you're stressed. You've probably eaten ice cream and maybe a KFC because that's what makes you feel good. Or you've eaten a mac and cheese or something that makes you feel good. You've had a bar of chocolate or two or a big bar. And now you're tired, but you just don't sleep. And now what's taking place in the body's like, wow, I'm sure it's about 9-10 o'clock. What's going on? Why is this person putting in more? Why is it giving us more work? We're looking to down tools for the night, and it gets to work. And you stay up and you think about the problem, or you may go on social media, or you might watch a movie, and it just becomes a vicious cycle. So leptin not released properly, if at all. Ghrelin, no. Melatonin, no. So you finally do get to sleep, and then you're up again. An hour, 2 hours later, can't go to sleep because you still feel full, and the body has not allowed you to get into that deep sleep, not allowed you to get into that REM sleep. And you're up and you're down, and you're up and you're down, and you're up and you're down, and you wake up, let's say 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and you still feel fatigued. And then you're like, man, why do I feel like this? And that itself brings on stress. Emotions and lifestyle. Let's keep going. We're still talking about stress. We're still talking about Daniel, because we're going to see, how did Daniel deal with his acute stress. Number one, we saw that he asked for more time. He was in a situation where he could do that. Now, I'm not saying that every single situation you're going to be able to buy yourself time, but you should have enough time to begin to think, okay, what am I going to do here? And one of the ways you do that is that you nourish the brain properly. So emotions and lifestyle. Our intake of vitamins and minerals stimulates the production of chemicals in the brain known as neurotransmitters that regulate our physical and mental functions, including the way we process emotions. Now, that's a very deep statement. What we eat actually affects how we process what we're feeling. So if you're eating things that are high in sugar, high in salt, high in fat, animal fats, high in saturated fats, high in cholesterol, then the way that you process information is going to be very different to the way other people who are on a plant-based diet process information. You may feel that the world is coming in on you. You may have the tendency to catastrophize things that are taking place and things that people say, where if you were thinking a little bit more clearly, you may not think that particular way. So again, let me read that again. Our intake of vitamins and minerals stimulates the production of chemicals in the brain known as neurotransmitters that regulate our physical and mental functions, including the way we process information. Particularly essential are the B vitamins, such as thiamine. Now, thiamine is the name for B3, vitamin B3. Pyroxidin is vitamin B6. Folic acid is the man-made equivalent to folate. So you've got thiamine, B3, pyroxidin, B6. Folic acid is B9, or the man-made version of folate, which is B9, and vitamin B12. Now you can get folate from dark leafy greens, romaine lettuce, broccoli, spinach, You can get it from beans, you can get it from nuts, you can get it from sunflower seed and whole grains. Now I love seeds on my salad. In fact, this evening, almost, well, every day, I have a salad before I have my main meal. And on my salad, I will have romaine lettuce, I will have cucumber, I will have tomatoes, I will have a sprinkle or a dash of cayenne pepper. I will add lemon juice. I will add olive oil, a little bit of olive oil. And I will also add some sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, and sesame seeds. And what I do is I just put them in a pan, roast them until they're brown, and then add them to my salad. You've never tasted salad like it. Beautiful. And I know then that I'm getting my B3, my B6, my B9, and my B12. I'm getting my thiamine, I'm getting my pyroxidin, I'm getting my folic acid, and I'm getting my B12. Even minor deficiencies of these nutrients can lead to depression and irritability, as well as hamper our ability to concentrate and stay motivated. So sometimes when a person is irritable, it could be that they're vitamin deficient, even just slightly. Now, remember the first thing that we do when we realize that something has unbalanced the equilibrium of the system is we ascertain the cause. We don't go, not even with natural remedies, that's not even the first step. The first step is to ascertain the cause. Now, if you've been with us for 3 weeks, you'll have noticed that when questions were coming to James Luke and Natalie Nash and Jackie, when questions were coming, they would say, I need to ask you a few more questions. I need to get a little bit more information. And the reason they were doing that is because we're trained. We don't just treat symptoms. Symptoms may be the symptoms for many different diseases, many different ailments. But the more questions you ask is the more you can narrow down what the cause is. Only when we know the cause do we begin to deal with the symptoms. Now, sometimes the cause can only be ascertained by going to the hospital. But once you know the name of the disease that you're dealing with, once you know the name of the cause that you're dealing with, that's when you go to work. So you heard Jackie say, and I said it last night, if we are met with somebody who has an itis, colitis, appendicitis, whatever it is, we know that is inflammation somewhere in the body. Colitis in the colon. We know that there's inflammation there. And then we begin to, in fact, not even start with the natural remedies. We say, okay, what law of health has been violated? Is it godly trust? Is it open air? Is it daily exercise? Is it sunlight? Is it proper rest? Is it lots of water? Is it always temperance? Is it nutrition? Which one of those laws has been violated? And once we begin to, certain things can be rectified just by not violating that law. So if it's as simple as headache and you've not drunk water, the remedy is drink more water. The cure is always in the cause. Let me say that again. The cure is always in the cause. If you know what caused the issue, then remove it, if possible. Sometimes there needs to be help. So the natural remedy is at the end of the process. So let me share with you, and I'll share it with you for the rest of the week. In case of disease, number 1, the cause should be ascertained. 2, wrong habits corrected. Number 3, environment should be changed. And number 4, then nature should be assisted to bring about right conditions in the system. So there are 4 steps: ascertain the cause, change wrong habits, change the environment, and then the 4th step is assist nature. That's where the natural remedies come in. So if someone's irritable, if someone is depressed, now not all depression is because of vitamin and mineral deficiency, granted, But as we're learning about our bodies and we're learning about how we can better keep our bodies healthy, remember, what law have I violated? What law has caused what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing? Unhealthy foods can adversely affect our emotional health. And that is true because when some people are feeling down and they want to pick me up, some people go for chocolate, some people go for a fried meat, maybe a KFC, some people go for alcohol, some people go for coffee, some people go for a Red Bull, because they realize that if I take this thing, then momentarily I'm going to feel better. What they don't realize is some of the things, well, the things that they're eating that are not good for them are actually causing internal stress on the body. So yeah, they have a high, but then when they come down low, it's lower than when they took that substance. So unhealthy foods can adversely affect our emotional health. People who drink excessive amounts of caffeine demonstrate many of the same physiological and psychological symptoms as people suffering from anxiety, while a diet with too much sugar has been linked to depression, aggression, and impaired judgment. When I used to work in the office, and if anyone works in an office, you'll know, if you work in a team, everyone has a drinks round. Everyone will take turns going to the drinks machine and get everyone else a coffee or a hot chocolate or a tea or whatever it is. And you know that drinks round, depending on how big the team is, could be every 20 minutes, every half an hour. So if a person is constantly drinking that much caffeine, that much substance, putting it into their body, when they crash, they go real low. And then the first thing they do, I know, caffeine makes me feel good. Let me go for that. Not realizing that caffeine is a neurotoxin. So they're just on this cycle. They're just on this roller coaster ride that is going to cause them to feel up and down, and there is going to be no equilibrium in the system. And that's internal stress. So what are some of the stress substances? What are some of the stress foods that people eat? Alcohol. Again, neurotoxin, alcohol, tobacco, caffeine. Now, caffeine is not just in tea and coffee. It's in some of your soft drinks, some of the soft drinks that they give to children. And then they wonder, I used to work in a school also, and at some schools started at 8:30 in the morning, and I would always wonder, what has this child eaten for breakfast? Because they were either bouncing around the walls at 8:30 in the morning, or they couldn't keep their eyes open for registration. And invariably what you would find is that they would open their bag and they would pull out Lucozade, or they would pull out a Bueno bar, which is chocolate. Because what they didn't realize is that was their pick-me-up, that was their fix. And the schools had to start sending letters home to tell the parents, listen, you can't be sending your kids to school with Buenos and Snickers and Lucozades. But you saw the difference in the child when they were deprived of that. They were not falling over the place, but their heads were on the desk. You couldn't get them to concentrate, because in essence, what was happening is they were detoxing. So sugar, that's the as Barbara O'Neill puts it, the pure crystallized acid. That's the refined white sugar. Theobromine, that's your sister, the in chocolate. Theobromine. Fatty foods, so that's your animal fats, that's your saturated fats, your margarines and your butters and all that kind of stuff, and your refined processed foods. Now here's the thing. Let me say this to you. This principle has just come to me. It's not in the presentation, but let me give it to you. There is a principle in the Bible and a text in the Bible that says that God is a God of the living, not of the dead. Okay, that's the text. So that principle, when applied to health, means this. It's not meat versus non-meat. It's life versus non-life. Let me say that again. It's not meat versus non-meat. it's life versus non-life, because there are some vegetarian vegan foods that have no life in them. They're processed just as much as the meat is. So just because a person is vegetarian and plant-based doesn't necessarily mean that they're healthy. You cannot get life from non-life. If you understand what I'm saying, you cannot get life from non-life, and we are living beings. So the food that we eat must also be living. The food that the living God gave to living humanity was living food. So again, it's not meat versus non-meat, it's life versus non-life. You cannot get life from non-life. So that's another reason to think about, what am I putting into my body? Is it fighting disease or is it promoting it? Is what I eat, is the choice I make with regards to what I put in my body, whether it be drink, whether it be a food, is it fighting disease or is it promoting disease? So how can we begin to fight back against stress? How can we begin to fight back against stress? Principle number 8. Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 22. Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 22. Now, this principle is much deeper than most people think. Much, much deeper than people think. So let me read it to you, and then I'll explain to you the depth. A merry heart, a happy heart, a contented heart, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. Let me read that again. A merry heart, a happy heart, a contented heart doeth good like a medicine. Now in English, when I'm teaching English, like or so is a simile. It's using one thing to explain another. So merry heart is similar to medicine. So a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones. Now just think about that for a little bit. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones. So when we are happy, when we are contented, when we laugh, when we enjoy the company of others, when we do things that are pleasurable, our body releases dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin, and endorphins. Dopamine is called the happy hormone. It makes us feel good. It gives us a sense of well-being. It gives us a sense of health. It gives us a sense of just niceness. I can't even find the word. That's what I'm going to say. It just gives us a sense of niceness. And those hormones literally act on the body like medicine. Act on the body like medicine. But the Bible says, the principle says, if you don't have a merry heart and you have a broken spirit, then it dries the bones. Now that's not just a wise saying from Solomon, who wrote that. That's actually medical, medical knowledge. A broken spirit dries the bones is not just a suggestion that he learned, or just not an idea that he thought of. It's actually medical information. Why? Because a broken spirit, a broken attitude, a broken mentality, a depressed mentality, an anxious mentality, they release other hormones into the system. And we've already seen that when the body's stressed and under different stresses, cortisol is released, and adrenaline is released. Now, here's why it's deep. Because when those hormones are released into the system, they inhibit the body's ability to fight disease. How does it do that? How does cortisol, how does adrenaline, how does a broken spirit malfunction the body? And more specifically, why does it dry the bones? Now, the bone marrow is part of the immune system. It's where T cells and B lymphocytes are made. So when you're under stress, when you're under chronic stress, when you have a broken mentality, a depressed mentality, an anxious spirit, a broken attitude, the immune system is literally suppressed. And your T cells and your B cells, your B lymphocytes, are those cells that fight disease. So when you're stressed, when you have a broken spirit, you're literally drying yourself out from the inside. Your ability to fight disease is drastically reduced. You begin to malfunction. And that's why this principle is so very potent. Now, we are in a situation, and we have been for the last 20 months, that has caused stress for millions and billions of people. And I wonder how many of those people have reduced and have compromised immune systems. In fact, so much so that the medical professional societies and people are now saying one of the best ways to deal with the pestilence 19 is to have a optimum functioning immune system. So now we know, because of the previous 3 weeks and 2 days, that in order to have a optimum functioning immune system, we need to have godly trust. We need to have open air. We need to have daily exercise. We need to have sunlight. We need to have proper rest. We need to have lots of water. We need to be always temperate, and we need to be nourishing the body. And on top of that, now we know that we need to make sure that our stress levels are at a level where we can manage them. If we get stressed, it needs to be acute. Because any period of acute stress over a long period of time goes from acute to, in maths, called an obtuse angle, but goes chronic. We want to make sure that our immune system is as powerful as it can be. What did Daniel do to deal with his acute stress? What did Daniel do to deal with his acute stress? Remember, the stress was that he was part of a group that was cited to be killed. He's part of it. He wasn't part of the initial conversation, but because he's part of the larger group, his life is in the line. What did Daniel do? Daniel 2 in verse 17 says, "Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions." I wonder if somebody can quickly tell me what was one of the things that Daniel did in order to deal with his acute stress. If you can put it quickly in the chat, what was one of the things that Daniel did that helped him deal with his acute stress? I'll give you a couple more seconds if you can type that fast. Daniel went to his house with he shared his concerns. Andrew, I see your answer. That's next. He sought friends. Absolutely, Monica. He made his circle small. And he made his problem known to his companions, those friends that he could trust, those friends that he could speak to, those friends who would listen and help him deal. And not just him, they were in the same situation, but he was the one that heard it. He relayed it to them and they came together. He made his friend circle small. Now, that doesn't mean that you only have a small friend circle. What it does mean is that there are some people that when you go through a situation, they don't need to know. You may call them friends, but they just don't need to know. Why? Because they're not going to give you the support that you need. Let me share with you another example where a person in the Bible shared a situation that was crushing the life out of him with a small group of people. Jesus, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, you can read about this in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Just before he goes to the cross, the Bible says that he brought his disciples to the Garden of Gethsemane. And most of the disciples he left at the gate. But he took Peter, James, and John into the garden with him. And he says to them, listen, guys, my soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death. All I want you to do is just be here, watch with me, and just pray for me. That's all I want you to do. So Daniel, when he's in a stressful situation, he seeks the aid of his close friends. His friend circle was small. Jesus, when he was in an acutely stressful situation, he sought his small circle of friends. God has placed us within families, within communities, and it's necessary that we find our close friends when we are in stressful situations so we can offload, that we can share our burdens. They say a problem shared is a problem halved. If you got more than one person, it could be quartered, it could be whatever fraction. But you need to find, if you're in a acutely stressful situation or even in a chronic stressful situation, you need to find those community people. And when by community, I don't just mean your neighbors, I mean your friends, your family, whoever it may be, so that you can come together. Now, this is not the only thing that neither Daniel did, nor it wasn't the only thing that Jesus did. The Bible says, or the narrative says, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. So Daniel he sought his close friends. Now remember, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah aren't the only Jews in Babylon, but he's the only ones that he goes to. They're the only ones that he goes to. He confides in them and says, look, it can't stop here, guys. Because while I've confided in you, we still don't have the answer to the problem. And the narrative says that they would desire mercies of God of heaven concerning the secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. So Daniel, number one, sought the close community of his friends. And then he said, guys, we need to pray about this. Now, there may be people listening who are not accustomed to praying. But let me tell you something, that God is waiting to lift you out of the situations that are causing you stress. God is waiting to take you out of those situations that have become too much for you. You've been strong for too long. You've tried to carry this heavy weight by yourself. You may have friends and families and community members that you can go and you can speak to. That is necessary. On top of that, if the prayer is just, Lord, help me. And the beautiful thing about God, and which we humans don't have, is that God reads thoughts, and he reads intentions, and he reads motives. So if all you say is, Lord, help me, 3 words, he understands the depth of those 3 words. And like Daniel, he will answer immediately. He will answer to get you out of the situation, because it's not God's plan that you be in stressful situations. It's not God's plan that you be crushed with the weight of life. He understands what life is about. He understands that things don't go necessarily according to plan. Even the best laid plans don't necessarily materialize the way that you've planned them. So Daniel confides in his close friends. And then he says, guys, we need to pray about this. And they pray. And then what you notice is that they go to sleep. They go to sleep. And the reason I know they go to sleep is because the next verse in the narrative says, then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. That's just another way of saying a dream. So notice what's happening here. He's confided in his friends. He's prayed to God. He's trusted that God would answer him. And then he's gone to sleep. And the Bible says, the narrative says, that when he's gone to sleep, the secret was revealed unto Daniel in his dream. And when he wakes up, he says, then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. What was the other thing that Daniel did? He showed gratitude for the work that God had done on his behalf. So number one, he confided in his close friends. Number two, he said, guys, we need to pray about this. Number three, after they've prayed about it, he trusts God that would give him the answer. He goes to sleep. Number five, when he wakes up and he realizes, you know what, this situation is different. I now have what I needed. He doesn't forget to give God thanks. Now, sometimes you may have a friend. Maybe you're the person who somebody has confided in. And amazingly, like I said, the Bible is not just a religious book, it's practical. It's the best book on health, it's the best book on genealogies, it's the best book on history. There are narratives. I don't like to say stories. There are narratives in the Bible that actually help us in our everyday life. Now, let me give you this narrative, this principle. There was a man who was sick, and he couldn't bring himself to Christ because he was paralyzed. He couldn't walk. He couldn't go where people were. It was impossible. But what his friends did for him is what he couldn't do for himself. His friends picked him up, carried him on top of a house, took off the roof, and put him in the presence of Jesus, put him in the presence of Christ. And the Bible says, Mark chapter 2 and verse 4, and when they could not come nigh unto him for the press, they uncovered the roof where he was, and when they had broken it up, they let down the bed wherein the sick of the palsy lay. Sometimes the work of healing cannot begin with the person who's sick because they're just in a situation, but the friends, the family, the close confidants of that person can do for them what they cannot do for themselves. When he gets well and he can walk, then he will walk for himself. But at this time, his friends did it for him. And the Bible goes on to say that when Jesus saw their faith, not even the man that was on the bed, not even the man that was sick of the palsy, when he saw the faith of the friends, Christ healed the man. So in all of that narrative, the person doesn't speak, the person doesn't take themselves to Christ. All that happens on their behalf by his friends. So, again, God has placed us in community. God has placed us in families. God has placed us where we have people that we can speak to. Now, like I said, not everyone who is a friend necessarily needs to know your business. Maybe you should, definitely should I say, you should pray about who to confide in. The book of Job is in a situation, stressful situation, and his friends come, and while they try to help him, he's like, guys, listen, man, I know you meant to try and do me good, but yeah, please just don't say anything. Just be here. The fact that you're here is good. Just don't say anything. And it's not because they were bad friends, but sometimes some people just don't know what to say. And they're frightened of silence. They're frightened of just being in the present. So again, make sure that you do confide with people, but make sure that those people that you confide with are the ones that you know are going to lift you up, like the friends of the man who was paralytic. So final few slides. What did Daniel do to overcome his acutely stressful situation? What lessons can we learn on how to overcome our stressful situations? Make sure we're eating the right foods for good brain health. We saw that yesterday, and we saw how that good brain food actually helped him in the next chapter. Make sure you're well hydrated with pure water for good brain health. Again, we saw that in yesterday. He was nourished. He was hydrated. Have a circle of close friends that you can talk to. Have a circle of close friends that you can talk to. Have a circle of close friends that can pray with you and for you. Again, have a close circle of friends that can pray with you and for you. What else have we learned? Have friends that can carry you to Jesus if necessary. Have friends that can carry you to the manufacturer of you if necessary. So here, real life example. If your car breaks down and it cannot move, you need a tow truck to take you to the garage. Your friends, your family, your community are your tow truck to the manufacturer. Are your tow truck to the person, to the manufacturer who's going to recreate, if necessary, or fix the problem that is taking place in the human machinery. What else have we learned? Trust that God has all the answers to your problems, and he will answer when you call. Those are the lessons that we've picked up from yesterday and from today on how to deal with a situation when you are mandated to do something and you know you shouldn't do it, on how to deal with acute stress so it doesn't become chronic stress. Trust the Creator God. Genesis 2:7, and God formed man of the dust of the ground. He knows what you're made of. He knows what's going to make you work optimally. So trust him. In fact, in the acronym God's plan, it's the first port of call. Because open air, daily exercise, sunlight, lots of water, proper rest, nutrition, temperance, they're not what brings healing. Those are the avenues, those are the doctors that God uses to bring healing. See, the healing, the power is in God. But he uses different things, just like he uses friends and family and community to lift people up out of their depressed and anxious state. What is God's plan for you as an individual, for me as an individual? Be of good cheer. Thy sins are forgiven thee. Take up thy bed and walk. God wants us to be mentally well, spiritually well, and physically well. God wants us to be mentally well, spiritually well, and physically well. The way that we say that is, he wants us to be whole. He wants us to be complete. He doesn't want us to be physically well and mentally. In fact, there is no such thing as physical infirmity without mental infirmity. There is no such thing as mental infirmity without physical infirmity. There is a symbiotic relationship between the two. When the mind is affected, the body is affected. When the body is affected, the mind sympathizes. When those two are good, then spiritually, we can be well also. So tomorrow, we're going to continue. We're going to have a look at another case study, this time from 2 more chapters in the book of Daniel. 2 more case studies from the book of Daniel. And we're going to deal with something a little bit different than we've dealt with so far. We're going to begin to see that the way that God has made us, there are certain things that we need to do in order to make sure that we are optimal, that we think straight, that we can rationalize, that we can just be the best that we can be. So please do come back tomorrow. Elder Clive, it's over to yourself.
Thank you, Andre, for another riveting presentation. It's 8:30, so we don't have time for follow-up questions. But what I'm going to say is, have a think through what you've been hearing over the last 2 nights, whether you've been here for both nights or not. And Andre, maybe we'll carve a little bit of time out for tomorrow's session.
Yes.
Individuals can bring questions based on the last 2 nights. I had a couple of things noted down around the whole issue of stress and whatever. And give it some thought, because I know on paper things look great. But if you've got questions about, how do I do this? Where do I start? What sort of things can I change? Bring your questions tomorrow evening, and we'll carve out a little bit of time to pose yourself some questions, Andre. If that's
Clive, can I just say, just before you continue and you finish, next week, our next presenter is going to go much deeper into anxiety, depression, stress, all of these different things. Okay. So you can bring your questions, but I might defer them to next week. Fair point.
Yeah. So any immediate questions, bring those tomorrow night. But also that's a bit of a plug for next week, right? We'll go deeper next week. And I think if there's one thing we can say about the condition of the world that we're living in now, stress is a big issue. Mental health is a big issue. And thank you, Andre, for reminding us that there is an inextricable link between physical and mental. And both have to be in harmony for you to get the best out of being a healthy individual. So thank you all. I'm just reading through if there's anything in our chat. Fine. Please remember to leave your contact details if you want more information. Visit the YouTube channel for a bit of a rewind and a re-listen. Direct your friends, family to those sessions as well. And we will join again tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. I'm just going to close in prayer, as is our custom. Let's just bow our heads. Lord God of heaven, we thank you for the time spared. We thank you for the challenge that Andre continues to offer us about how we can live life and live it more abundantly, because that was your purpose, Lord. That's what you have for us. You mean well for us. And so, Lord, help us to make that step change in confidence, to stretch out in faith. Help us to be reminded that our mental health is so important.